on-ramp so that new and emerging services in your community, so that your voters, especially those who are most marginalized, can have equal access to be amazing citizens like all of you. Anyway, that's it. Do you have any questions? Sorry.
It's my job to ask, Jeremy.
Oh, sorry, Councillor.
Does anybody have any questions? Councillor Egley.
Morning, Jeremy.
Good morning.
Thanks for coming out. You spoke about two of the programs that you run, one with essentially an outreach program with the schools.
Yep.
And then the other is a program that you ran with Ottawa paramedics.
Yeah.
And train the trainer approach.
Yeah.
So my question is the same for both. Did you receive funding from the Ottawa Paramedic Service for the service that you provided? And do you receive funding from the school boards for the service you provide to the local schools?
Great question. So school boards have nothing to do with you folk because you don't pay for schools. We actually get money through the Ministry of Education to do that, but the school boards do not pay us. We get some funding to top up our donations. In terms of the Ottawa paramedics, we struck a deal where they paid for some of their workshops, but all of the workshop design, all of the consultation, and about 50% of the workshops we ran were for free because at the time the paramedics didn't have a budget. After the program was extremely successful, the paramedics did make a contribution that helped cover some of our staff costs and travel, but mostly it just covered the, taxi or bus fare to and from paramedics headquarters, which was awesome, and we have zero complaints about it. In fact, when city services, whether it's the archives or the library or, the firefighters ask us to do workshops, we're always there. Arts asked us to do some consultation services to help them make their stuff more gender neutral. Same with city recognition services. We do it for free. We're not doing it to make a buck. But we're at a point right now where our service is really bursting at the seams, and we're hitting a point where, when the Osgood Township community was like, we need a drop-in for LGBTQ people, we were like, oh, this is really hard for us to manifest with volunteers and community folk. And so we're really struggling. It's preventing us from really serving the communities that we need to serve and the people that we need to help. And so creating the on-ramp would address a lot of those concerns. It would make our city stronger and better. I don't want to compare Ottawa to other cities, but Winnipeg gives their LGBTQ community organizations over $2 million every year. Comparably, the city of Ottawa gives just about $150,000 to all of the LGBTQ services through 5 organizations: YSB, Kind Services Ottawa, Centertown Community Health Center, and then 2 other agencies. So I think there's room for us to grow in supporting our LGBTQ community.
Okay, a quick follow-up question on the funding you received from the Provincial Ministry of Education. So do they provide you with a block fee, or do they provide you on a fee for service? In other words, do you get X amount of dollars for every school that you go to, or are you given, and has that number that you get from the province increased as you've gone to more schools?
So the answer is we get a block. So what they do is they hire staff, right? So they're like, we want 2 staff or 3 staff, and then they set a minimum number of what we need to accomplish. And year after year, we've tripled the expectations for them. I can happily send to all the city councilors our reports on that, but that's how they operate, and that's what they found was most cost effective. In years when there's a strike, for example, we obviously can't make our workshop numbers, so then they ask us to do other things. So workshop development, training resources, working with unions, et cetera, et cetera. And so and they're hard to get money out of. So some of our money has increased over the last decade, but not a heck of a lot. But to be honest, what we're asking for you is not for that. We want to serve the city and support city services, right? What happens in a school you guys won't pay for, and I would never ask you to. That's gross. Wasting city money is bad, very bad. They're laughing, but I'm so serious. I don't know why it's funny. Okay. You're not going to forget me, are you?
Thanks for your candor. We
You're
appreciate
welcome.
it.
Thank you. No, it's my pleasure. You can't start a day off without a smile.
Well, you're certainly achieving that. Thanks, Jeremy. Anyone else? No, thank you very much. Our next speaker
Thank you all for your time.
Our next speaker is Ian Gadbois from Ski Heritage East. And I noticed that Jean Lepage, Alexa Brewer, and Lyle Fair are all speaking on the same topic. I don't know if you wanted to come up together or not, but you're welcome to. I'll come together if you would like. Okay, but Mr. Gadbois, why don't you just kick this off.
Okay, good morning, Madam Chair and council members. A bit of a hard act to follow, Jeremy. I'm afraid I can't live up to those expectations. I'm here to talk about another approach to health and well-being of Ottawa citizens. I'm from Ski Heritage East. We're a not-for-profit organization in the east of Ottawa, as the name would imply. And the project being proposed is a professional grooming of an 8-kilometer trail along the river in the east end of Ottawa from Greens Creek to Trim Road. The trail would roughly follow the paved path used in summer for biking and walking. Grooming would facilitate multi-purpose winter recreation, including classic and skate skiing, snowshoeing, fat biking, and walking. We did do a 2-week trial in the spring to demonstrate both the technical expertise, the capability, and the fact that the community would come out. And those of you who don't like snow probably remember with distaste the 2 big dumps we had at the end of spring last year, but they worked to our benefit. We were able to groom that trail, and the community just flocked to it. It was incredible to see. Grooming would also maximize the number of days that the trail could be open for use, with a possible season of 90 days or more, far more than outdoor skating rinks, the canal, or non-groomed trails. The budget we're requesting from the city is $40,000, which is detailed in a document previously submitted to the committee, and it's based on an estimate from a professional grooming company. So we know exactly how that money would be spent. We will also be seeking money from other sources, crowdfunding, donations, to do other things, to do promotion, communication, and the like. Grooming would be done approximately 3 times a week using professional grooming equipment. This 8-kilometer trail would become a significant asset for Orleans, as well as adding to the National Capital's existing network of winter recreation opportunities. For a modest investment, the city would open up this trail along the Ottawa River for 4 seasons. This trail would appeal to and be easily accessible to children, families, and residents of all ages. This could become part of a citywide network of winter trails to support the active living policies of the city. This is an investment in infrastructure that will support the city's endeavors to build a healthy community. It will benefit the entire city and not just the East End.
You can all just keep going with your presentation, then we'll take questions at the end. To press your button to, oh, there we go. It's on. It's on. Now it's off. Now it's on. Now it's off.
Like this game.
Now it's on. Okay, leave it alone.
Good morning. Thank you for meeting us today. First, I'd like to start by saying that I am moved by the images that Ms. McKay presented about the homeless youth. If one includes the late fall and early spring in between seasons, winter is a long, long season. How can we make it more enjoyable? The long list of health and fitness benefits we have identified in the printouts that were already submitted show that almost everyone can benefit from a multi-use winter trail. The winter trail is all-inclusive and available to everyone at the same time without restrictions. This inclusivity will facilitate the integration of newcomers to Canada. Very importantly, it is a venue where children and youth will be given the opportunity to socialize and become fitter. Without a doubt, Ottawa is one of the best places to live in the world. Yet, let's take a brief moment to look at the dark side. We've just talked about that. We too have marginalized groups. It is saddening to note that some of our children and youth will drift away from the mainstream. They will fall in a vicious circle for a variety of reasons. Low self-esteem, unable to resist peer pressure, substance abuse, lack of moral guidance, gang membership, and all the other causes that you know all too well. They fall through the cracks in our system because they fall into the cracks of our system into a black hole. It is sad to note that some will choose the permanent solution to a temporary problem. How can we cut the supply to this dark hole? there are already several programs that deal with this matter. Yeah, cross-country skiing is not a panacea, but there are butterfly effect moments. All of us can pinpoint butterfly effect moments in their lives. A teacher's remark, a book, a look, a compliment, a smile. These moments create virtuous circles, sometimes leading to the I feel good in Ottawa in the wintertime syndrome, where children and youth can flourish. Perhaps these observations from the Gatineau Hills are examples of triggering events. Picture mothers on the trails with babies and gliders. Quite different from being on the street. Preteens challenging their parents to skate skiing sprints up steep slopes. Children bursting in joy while singing cheerfully on the cross-country ski trails. A blind skier regularly seen shuffling along well ahead of his assistant during 10-15 kilometer outings on challenging courses. Regularly taking the time to listen to a City of Ottawa police officer who was suffering from PTSD and found refuge on the Gatineau cross-country ski trails. I have one here from our pilot project last spring. An old fellow walking on the pathway, hand in hand with his grandson, talking man to man. Who knows about what? The cross-country maniac dressed like an alien with downhill goggles and a small breathing hole, braving impossible conditions, minus 20 degrees Celsius weather, high wind chill factor. He took 1 hour to hot wax his skis to get the perfect glide. And finally, skiing easily in the late afternoon. After a freezing rain episode, as the sun is setting and casting a reddish glow across the sky, suddenly a gazillion flashes of light are scattered in all directions. The forest lights up, surpassing all the splendors of Versailles, confirming my lifetime nature lover and tree hugger membership. Yes, small causes can have large effects. My question to you, how can you help us help our children and youth and the whole community find their magic moment? Thank you.
Just continue on.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. Can you hear me? Thank you. The question I would like to address is whether there's sufficient community support and benefit to warrant this investment. You can tell we are clearly cross-country ski advocates, but there are many different kinds of investments to a community, or benefits to a community. We received thousands of responses through our Facebook and email over the past 6 weeks endorsing this initiative. Overwhelming. It averaged about 1,000 per week over the past 6 weeks. The support from spans our 4 community associations of the East End wards, who together represent about 200 residents. And this has been strong support. They've published in their newsletters or Blackburn Hamlet banner. They've sent in written endorsements, and they've also, I think, mailed a lot of emails to the councillors. However, the main beneficiary of this investment, I think as Jean has alluded to, may be the children and youth of our community. Right now, there are limited opportunities within Orleans for kids outside of hockey. We have 4 secondary and 5 elementary schools within close proximity to this proposed trail. We've named the schools for those that aren't that familiar with the East End. The high schools include St. Matt's, Beatrice de Loge, Garneau, Corrine Wilson. And Corrine Wilson is a good example of why this is a beneficial endeavor for the whole community. Kareen will literally back onto this proposed trail. All of the high schools run outdoor phys ed winter programs, particularly supporting cross-country ski clubs. Kareen is outstanding in this. They support a Nordic ski team, and they have also offered to become an access point for all of the feeder schools in the community and support racing and time trials with the High School Skiing Association, Athletic Association. So they're not offering passive endorsement. They're willing to work with us, help run ski clinics, and really get into the promotion to as many people as possible of this sport. We've also received strong written endorsement from Scouts, Cubs, Girl Guides, and Brownie Leadership in Orleans. And in all, this represents 300 kids plus, all of their families. They have a lot of winter activities. They look for venues, and this was more than welcome. There are also others who will benefit from the trail apart from the individual cross-country skiers or snowshoers or walkers. And most of these beneficiaries draw their membership from across the city. I'm talking about the Ottawa Ski Club, so clubs. For example, the Orleans Nordic Ski Club, Women on Skis, Nakertalk, and my favorite, SOFID, which is Seniors Over 50 in Training, and Cross Country Ski Ottawa. They have all been more than enthusiastic about supporting this. Also, cross-training for other sports. An unexpected source of support came from those who need cross-country outdoor training activities to maintain their fitness levels during the winter. And I'm talking about kayak and canoe clubs. And we've again outlined those, Petrie Island Canoe and Kayak Club, the Ottawa River Canoe Club, Rideau Canoe Club, combined membership of about 1,200 people. And the hiking and rambling clubs. For example, the Rideau Trail Association wrote us a strong endorsement. They have a membership of over 600 people. All were really supportive and enthusiastic to learn that there could be an alternative ski area to continue their training. We're not competing with what already exists. It's very much seen as an addition to a citywide network. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, this trail also will offer a safe, accessible path for seniors during the long, long winter months. Recognizing this, we now have a really strong ally in the Bruyere Village to support and produce the initiative for residents. A groomed trail is a safe trail for residents to walk on. The need is clear, but this type of infrastructure simply does not exist in Orleans area. I've been a community member of Orleans for over 40 years. I have been waiting a long, long time. What we are asking is your help in building this 8-kilometer winter lineal park across the Ottawa River and as part of a citywide winter resource for active living. Thank you.
This trail fits within the city's promotion of livability as a key asset to business and talent, the attraction of business and talent. The reach of this proposal is not just the Orleans community, but it is citywide. Also, the heart of Orleans business BIA and Orleans Chamber of Commerce have endorsed this initiative. This money will go directly to the community through a local business and to people who will be hired to groom trails. In addition, we've had endorsement from Marie-France Lalonde, our MPP, and Andrew Leslie, federal MP, and as well as the city councillors, Bob Bonnet and other East End councillors, Stephen Blade, Tim Tierney, Joe Middick, as well as Mayor Jim Watson. I'd just like to summarize that the biggest impact may be to those people who, as we alluded to, are somewhat shut in during the winter, and it may be just provide that half an hour outside. And I'd like to quote from a scientific study called Our Brain on Nature. A 15-minute walk in the woods causes measurable changes in physiology and provides psychological benefits. This proposal would be a relatively small investment for significant improvements in livability in our region.
Okay, thank you all for your presentations. There's some questions, so don't go away. We'll start with Councillor Fleury.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Thank you for being here this morning. cross-country ski has really, in my mind, picked up in recent years in Ottawa. For years and years, people would just cross into the Gatineau Park, and now we're seeing folks take advantage of our trails and our landscape on the Ottawa side. So kudos to you for coming to committee today. Before my question, I'll just preface by, I believe the problem starts with the federal government, and you're gonna think it's weird, but I'll explain very briefly. Sports Canada, which is a lot of the description you're describing, is in Heritage Canada. And a lot of the health benefits that you're describing, which we all buy into and believe, I'm a cross-country skier myself, are under participation in Health Canada. Too bad both of those organizations aren't working hand in hand within the same department to demonstrate more of a united landscape on the national front. Nor here nor there. My question really for you is, so are you a formal cross-country sport club? If so, what's the banner, what's the name of the organization?
Yes, we are an incorporated not-for-profit organization called Ski Heritage East.
Okay, excellent.
And I wouldn't characterize us, we are obviously all passionate skiers, but we really want to emphasize that this trail will be multi-purpose. It's going to be wide, it's going to be parallel. Those of you who classic ski know the bane of dog walkers crunching the trail. We're going to try to make it wide enough so that everybody can get out there and enjoy it, not just skiers.
Yeah, and we've seen also the pickup of the fat bikes, which are also using some of those trails. So maybe the conversation, I think it'll be tough to unlock 40,000 in this year's budget, although I do think it's important that you came and spoke to the matter. I think it's important that we regroup, because there's a successful program that began in Councillor Leeper's area, where they've gotten some pretty good traction and good grooming. I know that Toby and I are working on a trail along the Rideau River. We've so far been unsuccessful in unlocking funds, but we have a good group of volunteers. And then we discover you guys in the East End. So maybe all of our three groups can regroup and see how do we best approach this. For example, asking Trillium Foundation for capital funds for the grooming equipment would be one of the approaches. Anyhow, really thankful for you coming here, and we do have some thinking to do over the short, medium term on how we fund community sports clubs, because we have the outdoor ring program, which we're all so proud of, and at some point that started at the city, so we can feel that there's a desire and appetite to begin and initiate those conversations. So thank you for that.
Okay, merci, Conseiller Fleury. Councillor Leeper.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much for coming out today. I'm very supportive of the city trying to find a way to fund the East End Trail, but I do want to emphasize it's important that we do it right across the city as a coordinated effort to bring winter trails to the city. Last year, I think one of the successes for what we're calling the Sir John A. Macdonald Winter Trail was that we raised, I think, $27,000 roughly through crowdfunding. I kicked the whole thing off with a small investment so that they could put a deposit on a snow machine, and our partners at Dovercourt through the crowdfunding managed to leverage that into several tens of thousands of dollars, which has led to thousands of people using the trail on the weekend. My question for you is, given the success of the crowdfunding efforts, hundreds of individuals donating tens of thousands of dollars, we're having a very successful crowdfunding initiative again this year. I assume that your group is interested in putting the same skin in the game to make sure that you're bringing dollars to the table and not just looking for the city to fund the whole thing.
Thanks, Jeff. Absolutely. In fact, we've used your $27,000 crowdfunding to kick the butts of our East Enders, because we do have a crowdfunding program. As of last week or 10 days ago, we had about $1,100 in it, which wasn't much. I put out a little notice on our Facebook, you know, look at the West End, how come they're ponying up so much? And we've had a little flurry of donations as a result of that, but nowhere near 27,000. We have a couple of other liabilities, I would say, in the East End, or maybe I shouldn't call it liabilities, things that we don't have that you have. We don't have a Dovercourt, for one thing, and we don't have a Dave Adams, for another thing. We went out and talked to Dave Adams last spring and looked at your operation, wonderful, and Dave's advice to us was, don't do it, it's too much work. And so they have a miracle man out in the West End who does so much of this work, and if we could find a Dave Adams in Orleans, that would help.
We are, I appreciate you raising the point. Dave obviously is a huge contributor, and if we ever lost him, it would be difficult to find that sustainability. We're struggling with the same issue that you are, which is the long-term sustainability of this trail without some additional funding. Crowdfunding will get us so far. We want to become more sophisticated at finding the sponsors to the trail, but I count me as an ally in seeking funding from the city in order to ensure the long-term sustainability of being able to grow this in partnership with the users of the trail, sponsors of the trail, and our federal partners who make much of the land available. Thank you very much for coming out today.
Thank you, Councillor Leeper. Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your presentation. Can you just clarify, do you need 40,000 in total, or you're asking for the city to contribute 40,000?
Sorry. We need 40,000 for the grooming part of the trail. So from January 1st to whenever the snow ends, let's hope that it's April 31st for those of us who like snow, we would need $40,000 to groom the trail. Other money, crowdfunding money, other donations we might get would be used for other purposes, special events, communication, director's liability insurance,
right.
A bunch of other things that we require.
Have you had any commitments? You had mentioned Ms. Lillo and Mr. Leslie. Have they, other than saying this sounds great, have they cut you any checks yet?
No, we haven't. Marie-France, of course, is pointing us to Trillium, and we're going to look at Trillium, but Trillium takes a while.
Right.
We might have Trillium money for next season. We certainly won't have it for this season.
So are you wanting to get this up and running this coming winter, or is this more of a we'd like to plant the seed and maybe this is something that we can look at for the winter of 2019?
We have planted the seed. When we did our trial in the spring, it worked very well, and the people came out. We've built up quite a lot of interest through Facebook and other communications methods in the community. People are expecting a trail this January. Okay. If that doesn't happen, of course, we will. We've assured people that are giving us crowdfunding money that money is going to stay in the bank until such time as we can make this happen.
Sure. Well, I support inexpensive, outdoor, physically active initiatives. I have no idea what the priorities are in the East End. I notice Councillor Manette is next to speak, so I'll listen to him. But I'm supportive of your ask overall. I just don't know what the other competing priorities are for very limited dollars. But I'm, like Ms. Lalone and Leslie, supportive, but guarded with the city finances at this time. But thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, Councillor Brockington. Councillor Manette.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess the question I would have is, the paths are used very heavily spring, fall, summer, right? I mean, you know, people use it for walking dogs, people use it for walking, cycling, jogging. I mean, go on and on, you know, it's well used. After the snow starts, are the paths used at all?
I'm not only a skier, I'm a dog walker. When the paths are not groomed, it's very, very difficult to walk. So you'll find that people will gravitate to where the city is actually plowing, which is, say, behind Corinne Wilson. The seniors, for one, will not go on an ungroomed path because the risk is too strong of falling. The fat bikers, they try. I've seen a few make it halfway and then they fall over because it's not passable. So it's not really that usable a trail. The snowshoers generally are the ones that beat out a trail, and then you'll find everybody follows where the snowshoers are going. But it's hard. It's really difficult, and it really, really limits the use of the path.
Last year when we did the pilot project, you did the pilot project. How successful was it last year?
As Ian said, people flocked to it. We didn't advertise. It was word of mouth. We had people coming up to us with grins from ear to ear, just saying this is the most wonderful thing that's ever happened. And we kept saying, well, thank Bob Manette, send an email. But there were hundreds. And we're talking at the end of the season when most people were on their knees praying that the snow was going to go away, and easily hundreds on good days.
I won't ask much more questions because I know you have a lot of delegations. I just want to say that it's when Councillor Leeper mentions it should be the full network, I totally agree with that. I think that it would be nice if we could look at a number to make it happen from Dover Court right up to Trim Road. That would be fantastic access to all of our residents, and it would make the PATs accessible all year round, not just spring, fall, and summer. So, just so you're aware, we're still working on it, and can't make promises, obviously. But I know, obviously you heard from the councillors the three councillors, were very supportive to have the dialogue and to try and make things happen in the future. And the final question is, if for some reason the financing is not there, what would it take to make it happen for another like pilot project like you did last year for this year? Have you ever done a calculation to that?
I'm going to do one on the fly, Bob. We haven't really, but I'm thinking we could make something happen for $15,000.
15,000? Okay.
Yeah.
No,
it wouldn't be
it's just good to know.
It wouldn't be the 3-time-a-week professional grooming for the full season, but it would be enough to keep some momentum going. We had the fantastic pilot. There is an expectation. If we miss an entire season, it kind of air out of the balloon.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Minette. Councillor Schwally.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You indicated in the presentation that the mayor was supportive of this, but the mayor writes the budget, so I'm wondering if you know why he didn't put it in the budget.
Well, I don't know why. I'm not in his head. We said he's supportive because we had a meeting here with council members and a representative of the mayor's office early in the spring, just around the time of our pilot project. And at that time, all the council members that were in the room, including the mayor's representative, supported the concept of the project. That's a little shy of writing a check. I guess it's a little bit the same.
It's actually a lot shy of writing a check.
It's a bit the same as our MP and our MPP being supportive, but there isn't a check yet.
Okay. So my next question is, it's a worthwhile pursuit for sure. The question is, how would we make it just you? Because we've heard about the other groups in the East End, but in the West End, I know in Councillor El Shanturi's ward, you have a hard-working group of volunteers that does that now. You have people in Bell's Corners who are starting to do that now, and they're a group before. So I'm wondering, do you think this should be done just for your area, or should it, do you recognize there probably has to be something that goes to both ends of the city?
Absolutely. I think it would be wonderful for this to be done in, as you say, everywhere that there are ski trails available, much the way the city supports skating rinks throughout the city. If the city could support ski trails in the same way they support skating rinks, that would be wonderful.
Thank you, Councillor.
Could I just follow up to that answer?
Very briefly?
Very briefly. We are definitely going after long-term funding, Trillium, MEC. There's several avenues that we've approached, and that will be all for next year. So what we're trying to ensure is that we can demonstrate to over a large portion of the city of the Ottawa what this trail could look like. The vision, the dream would be to have it from one end of the city right across. So we're not asking for special treatment, but it would make a wonderful demonstration project.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you, Councillor Shirelli. Seeing no further questions, we'll move on to our next delegation, which is Roland Pitt from Réseau des Centres pour les Aînés Francophones d'Ottawa. And Monsieur Pitt will be followed by Lynn Sherwood, Chair of the Social Justice Committee, Eastern Branch, Ontario Association of Social Workers.
Madam Chairperson, members of the committee, good afternoon. I am Roland Pitt, Chairman of the Centre Pauline Charon, and other centers for Francophone senior citizens. Anne-Marie Laurando is the General Director of Retraite en Action. Julie Lisotte de RAFO, le Rendez-vous des aînés francophones, et Marcel Bibot, who is the Treasurer. Today, I am speaking to you as the spokesperson of le Réseau des Centres pour aider francophones d'Ottawa. The network is an organization offering French-speaking services in the city of Ottawa. Okay, members of this network include le Centre Pauline Charon à Vanier, le Centre Séraphin Marion du MIFO Orléans, le Rendez-vous des aînés francophones d'Ottawa, RAFO, the Gig Service Center on Murray in Lower Town, and Retraite en Action, REA, which is located in the Patro of Ottawa building, serving the whole Ottawa population. We have a membership of approximately 5,000 members who are 50 years old and older. Each network member is constituted as a non-profit organization. We offer many activities to the elders so that they will be self-supporting themselves. Even if we are referring to members who are 50 and more, they constitute a great part of our membership. First, I would like to thank the city for the annual funding that it gives our members, allowing them to accomplish their mission. This funding is extremely important because elders seem to be skyrocketing in Ottawa, and we wish them to remain active and in good health. Unfortunately, we are worried by the impact of the minimum wage, which will increase to $14 on January the 1st, and then $15 next year. We are not against this increase. However, we believe that the salary of many of our employees will be adjusted because of this increase of the minimum wage. An increase of $2.40 per hour in 2018 represents an additional expense between $4,300 and $4,900 per employee per year, without taking into account social benefits. Moreover, in 2019, the increase of $1 will be adding $1,800 to $2,100 per employee. Although employees do not get the minimum wage, we will have to readjust our wage scales in order to maintain a balance. I hope you understand this issue. It will be very important for our center. An increase of over $22,500 the first year and another $10,000 the second year within human resource budget without adding staff. Presently, we weren't told that our municipal funding could be modified to take this into account. We therefore are hoping that the committee will be recommending the city board to include more money in the 2018 and 2019 budget for the renewable community funding program, as well as recreation funding, in order to help those organizations face this new reality. Thank you. Merci, Madame Pitts. Thank you. Questions?
Conseiller Minette.
Merci.
Conseiller Monette, thank you for your presentation. If there is no adjustments, what will happen for the future programs? It means that salaries of those who are at minimum wage and those who have more experience or more seniority, the difference can be very small. However, it would mean that we would lose people who have a lot of experience. For the time being, we don't have enough staff because we cannot give them the average salary that are being given to city employees. What I would like to know is, will it does it mean that you will have to let go some employees? Probably, which will mean that those who stay will have much more work. We will have to call upon volunteers, and services will undoubtedly be reduced. And of course, there are more and more elders, and we would like to attract younger members so that the center is able to survive. Therefore, we need money to organize interesting activities for the younger participants. Thank you for your contribution today. Other questions?
Merci beaucoup. Next, we have Lynn Sherwood, Eastern Branch, Ontario Association of Social Workers. Following Ms. Sherwood, we'll have Raynal Dolores and Sandy Woolley. Good morning. You just press the button on the microphone.
Thank you for for permitting us to come here today. My name is Lin Sherwood. I'm with the Eastern Branch of the Ontario Association of Social Workers, and this is my colleague Carol Ann Pease, who's also going to be speaking to the issues. We represent 480 professional social workers throughout Eastern Ontario who work in a wide variety of settings, from hospitals to schools to prisons, and even here at City Hall. So what we're trying to do today is speak to a couple of issues that we see across our sector in our direct work with vulnerable and marginalized people. And we see a lot of vulnerable and marginalized people. We want to thank you for putting extra money in for reduced bus fares for low-income people. We think that's really important. And we want to thank you for addressing, at least beginning to address, the issue of subsidized housing, needing more housing, and for providing more support for nonprofit agencies. We recognize that there's initiatives in housing and in mental health services coming from the provincial, federal, and municipal levels, and that they're all muddled up, and we're not too sure exactly how they all sort themselves out, nor do we feel that we can advocate for funding for any particular program, because we represent workers from a wide variety of organizations who all have to keep their jobs. What we want to do is present a couple of principles that we think you should be keeping in mind when you're focusing on which programs you're going to fund and how you're going to fund them. And I want to address some issues in subsidized housing. We want to say also that we really support the statements made by the Alliance to End Homelessness, by the local community centers, and by the folks from Operation Come Home, because we're looking at some really rotten, awful situations in the city. I'm going to turn over to Carol Ann for a few minutes to talk about the principles involved that we think are important, and then I'm going to talk about the housing thing.
Okay. One of the most important principles to us is that programs that are open, are available and working for marginalized and vulnerable people, is that these programs actually assist these people in becoming less marginalized and less vulnerable. It's very, very important that people's needs, basically the human needs are to be useful. It's also very important to be connected with other people. And so if those two needs are kept in mind and deciding which programs are the best, I think that's very important. Often programs, particularly counseling programs, are set up that there's a long waiting list and then you get a diagnosis and then you eventually get treatment, but the focus is on the disabilities and the difficulties rather than the strengths and the capacities people have. I think it's very important that any program you have has as a focus to help people to become more competent. I would say also, in terms of subsidized housing, there's long waiting lists, but also once people are into subsidized housing, often their situation is pretty marginalized and pretty difficult. This has been mentioned by an earlier report, and certainly a concern that, for example, Lynn had a client who had to wait 5 days had to be in his apartment every single day waiting for heat to be turned on, and that certainly is not being treated in a very respectful way. When I left an agency I'd worked at for many, many years, I asked everybody I'd worked with, what had I done that was the most helpful for them? And every single person, regardless of how I'd known them, said, you respected me. And I think the key to working with marginalized and vulnerable people is respect.
We're saying this because very often the programs that look really very exciting and innovative, have scientific bases and whatnot, end up teaching people that there's something wrong with them that can't be fixed and that they have to depend on somebody else to do it for them. And what we think is really important, that people build capacity and being able to be useful and to have normal relationships with other people. But what I want to address in particular is,
I just need you to wrap up, please, because your time's out. If you could just wrap up, and maybe there'll be some questions to tease out final thoughts.
I can talk?
Just to wrap up, 15 seconds.
The bed bugs are a crisis in Ottawa, and you guys got to do something about it in public housing because it's really, really bad. I see 10 clients a week. 5 of them are coping with bed bugs, and they're all living in public housing. Public housing isn't taking it seriously enough, and it's causing a great crisis in subsidized housing situations. It's not safe. And we all use the buses and the coffee shops, so bed bugs get around.
Okay, I'll thank you both for your presentations. I'll see from my colleagues if there are any questions. Councillor Kakish.
Vice Chair, just on the bed bugs issue, because this came up during a budget consultation that I had with Councillor Eglay and Taylor as well. And so we notified Public Health and Dr. Levy at the time, and I'm just wondering what kind of resources or assistance do you have right now, or do people have that are impacted by
Okay, what happens with the bed bugs is that people are it's a very stigmatizing thing to have, so they try not to tell anybody about it, number one. Number two, most of the people who live in supported housing are there because they're disabled. So if they go and report that there's bed bugs in their place, the management says, oh, well, you have to wash all your clothes in boiling water, and you have to bag everything up in plastic, and you have to do this and that. Well, these are people who have mobility issues. They have no money to spend $30 for getting their clothes washed. They're completely overwhelmed, and they're thrown into crisis right from the beginning. Until they figure out how to get someone to get their mattress out of the room, move all the furniture around, the housing people won't do anything, okay? And it needs to be done quickly and efficiently. The other thing that happens is when they fumigate the place, they only fumigate one place. And the bugs just move next door and then come back in a couple of weeks. So when these issues come up, the whole building has to be fumigated. There needs to be a very clear, systematic program. When somebody reports a bed bug, a team goes in, bags up their stuff, boils the clothes, does whatever is necessary, and deals with it efficiently and effectively, and fumigates the whole building. I think it's right now I have 10 clients I see this week. 5 of them are dealing with bed bugs. And I keep hearing stories from a wide variety of people. I have colleagues who work in hospital emergency departments who report frail seniors coming in covered with bed bug bites. Especially for isolated people, it gets to be a nightmare. Okay, and it's getting much worse. This year I think it's the worst.
Okay, thank you for that.
Clients in community housing buildings and OCH buildings, or a mix of variety?
In a variety of settings. People who are in those high-rise apartment buildings, the ones on Donald Street are notorious, right? And the ones downtown, the aging in place buildings are a big mess. There's reports of elderly, frail people coming in really bad shape with bed bug bites. These are isolated people. If they were able to function independently, they wouldn't be living in this housing. So that they often have cognitive problems, they have mental health issues, they're physically frail, and things get to be really, really bad. And when these things happen, they spread. So it's moving into from the subsidized housing to general low-income housing and into the community. And you know, your kid goes out and hangs out at somebody's place for the weekend, comes home, you're going to have them out in Barhaven too, right? So,
Okay, I'll jump in there. Thank you for the information. Further questions?
Thanks, Vice Chair.
Okay, thank you both for your presentation. Much appreciated. Next will be Raynal Dolores, Sandy Woolley from the Nepean Rideau Osgood Community Resource Center, and they will be followed by Mo Maloney from Heartwood House. Good morning to you both. There's a button on your microphone. If you could just push it, and you have 5 minutes.
Good morning, and thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Raynal Dolores, and I'm a member of the Board of Directors for Nepean, Rideau, and Osgood Community Resource Center, affectionately known as NROC. I'm here today with Sandy Woolley, the indefatigable Executive Director for NROC. As one of the 13 community health and resource centers in the city of Ottawa, our organization feels that it's very important for me to speak today on behalf of our residents, our clients, partners, and stakeholders. We recognize that our input is being heard, and we sincerely appreciate that. NROC is different from many other community health and resource centers, as we serve a diverse population which spans the suburban and rural areas of this great city. But like other community health and resource centers, we are very concerned about the lack of funding for social infrastructure that we've seen in recent budgets, and we are also seeing the upcoming budget. NROC does, of course, acknowledge and appreciate the proposed 3% increase in funding to community agencies. However, we would like to point out that 93% of community and social service providers have seen an increase in demand for services between 2011 and 2015. The budget for social infrastructure has not kept pace with this growth. As a result, Ottawa's most vulnerable residents are experiencing longer time wait and reductions in services. The fact of the matter is our rural and suburban areas are experiencing unprecedented growth. As such, the 3% increase given to community agencies does not reflect the pressures that our suburban and rural communities are experiencing. With that, I humbly ask you why the city's population growth is not addressed in this budget. Let's pause for a second. Let's just pause for a second. Pause and imagine the struggles of a typical family that we work with at NROC. A single parent with 3 young children, newcomers to Canada. The parent is a low-income earner, fortunate enough to be earning a minimum wage job, yet can't afford the basic things that some of us take for granted. Things like diapers for infants, school supplies, healthy food transportation, and housing. This is a harsh reality for many families, the harsh reality for vulnerable families in our communities. As our communities grow NROC and other agencies help more and more families who find themselves in similar situations. Without increases in funding which keep up with increases in our population growth, more and more of these families are going without the necessary pillars to support the social determinant of health, such as employment, education, housing, social inclusion, and of course, income distribution. Research shows again and again and again that the social determinants of health have a stronger impact on physical health than behaviors such as diet and exercise. Because of these pressures on our community members, we are also now seeing an influx of counseling clients whose situations are becoming more complex. And of course, many people cannot afford these fees that are associated with counseling and depend on NROC and other agencies for critical mental health support. We have an obligation to all of these members of our community, an obligation to grow, to change or increase our services as our population grows and our services become more and more necessary. Our centers are of course resourceful, and we've continued to find ways to meet needs, but the pressures will soon not be manageable. Our rural community members have different challenges, different lifestyles, and of course different needs as compared to our suburban and urban residents. Their struggles with transportation and access to services are two of these differences, which are very difficult for our centers to address without the needed investment in social infrastructure that we aren't seeing with this budget. As an organization, we continue to work hard to find creative ways to meet our rising needs. Of course, this includes fundraising, but it still falls way short of our needs. In that context, we support a reasonable increase in taxes in order to look after more than bridges, streets, and water supply. Let's also look after our communities and the people who live here. We look forward to continuing to work with you with the goal of supporting our communities and helping our residents to live better lives. Your continued support and increasing investment in social infrastructure will make all the difference by allowing us to achieve these goals and making Ottawa an inclusive society that truly cares about its community. Let us work together. Let us work together to build a better, stronger, and healthier community together. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. We do have a question. Councillor Eglay, you're up.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much for coming out, and thank you for the work that you do. NROC's a very important and vibrant part of my ward, so thank you for that. This question is more directed to you, Sandy. We talked a little while ago about the issues around ramp funding, and I had indicated to you at the time that it was my understanding that a review was coming forward in 2018, and Ms. Burrell has confirmed that today. You've got the mic. So after we had our chat, I don't know if you had time to think about what considerations you thought should go into that review. What should city staff be looking at going forward into 2018?
When we're considering the ramp funding?
Yes.
Well, that's a really good question, Keith. I think we need to look at what organizations are out there in the city that are not supported now that can support some of the pressures that we see right now. So we would be talking about housing supports, transportation, especially in the rural communities, support of our newcomers and our refugees, mental health support, our growing suburban populations and communities, access to food, access to services for rural residents, and information and referrals. So those are just some of the pressures that we're seeing, that if there can be support, ramp support for other organizations that are out there in our community, we can all continue to work and work better as teams and form more partnerships, and we can help to support our citizens in those ways.
Thank you, Councillor Eglay. If I can ask a question, what are you struggling with right now at your resource center to provide your population?
Was my mic still on? All those items that I just mentioned. So, do you want me to mention them?
No, I know there's the ramp funding, but I wanted to specifically ask your center. But if that's the answer, I appreciate that.
Those are and there's many. Those are a few that I've just kind of come up with right now off the top of my head. But for sure, housing supports. We've seen a change in the housing model. So we used to have housing supports that we've lost because of the Housing First model. So we have a lot of clients who come in just with, we're talking about the bed bugs there, ability to meet their rent, hydro support. There's, in the suburban and urban areas, there are not a lot of supports for those, so housing is a big one. Transportation, we've seen the Equipass come in, but we notice a lot of our lower income residents still do not have the funds to be able to buy those passes, so there's that issue there. Mental health support, as we mentioned in our presentation, because of the stresses on our society right now, we're seeing more and more people coming in for counseling, and we're seeing a lot more complexity in the issues that they're facing, so there's mental health support. As our communities grow, we just cannot keep pace with those and the other services that I mentioned.
Thank you for that. I do have one more question from Councillor Kakish. Councillor?
Thank you, Vice Chair, and thank you, Sandy and Reynold, for your presentation and for all the work that you do in the community. And I know as well how closely you work with a lot of the newcomers that have arrived as well, and the tremendous work that NROC has been doing there. You mentioned a couple of times growth and keeping up with the growth, and I'm just wondering, is most of what's eating up your resources predominantly growth local, or are you referring mostly to the newcomers that are eating up more and more of your resources, or just population growth in general?
It's a combination, so we're definitely seeing, because a lot of the newcomers are quite close to our center, we're seeing a lot that are now aware of our center and the services that are out there, so they're able to come in, which is great, but that's definitely eating up our resources. And then the growing communities, the suburban, the growth that's there, is we're just not able to keep up with that growth as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, and thank you to you both for your presentations. Appreciated. So next we have Mo Maloney, Heartwood House, and following will be Anouk Burtner from Echo Equitable. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Mo Maloney, cough halfway in the middle, you have it. 'Tis the peril of being Irish, I say, and the last name is Maloney. You know, they say small business is the backbone of our Canadian economy. I'm here to say that small organizations are the backbone of volunteerism in our communities, and they are the building blocks of the strength of our city, of our compassion, and of who we desire to be as a city. To begin, I want to thank you for this opportunity to speak to you today. It's a powerful feeling to be alongside 44 other nonprofits who are here today to tell you their story, and to be strengthened by the fact that you are here to listen, to understand, and to consider opening a door for funding that has been closed since 2010. I'm so proud of our city. I'm so proud of the fact that each day you are here taking into consideration what you can do to reduce poverty and its impact in our city. I'm so proud to represent Heartwood House. You know, not many people know about Heartwood House. We're a small guy doing a big thing. Heartwood House is home to 20 small charitable organizations who respond to the goals of poverty reduction every day by serving those who are marginalized, living in poverty, and in need of educational, economic, emotional, employment training, and recreational support. Over 21,000 people visit Heartwood each year to receive the services from our member groups. I'm very proud that there are 3 Heartwood members here today, the Eastern Ontario branch of the Ontario Association of Social Workers, Echo Equitable, and the Community Laundry Cooperative. I'm very proud that Heartwood House has come to know Elspeth and the work that Operations Come Home does. I'm very proud that Brenda from Children at Risk is here. We've partnered with them before. 'Tis a grand opportunity for all of us to remember small organizations. In one of Mayor Watson's visits to Heartwood House, he described small charities and nonprofits as the ones who fly under the radar. Small organizations don't have sources of operational funding. We are the organizations who have to twist and turn and maneuver to create new projects to meet requirements of foundations when our real need is operational funding. Small organizations do excellent work in meeting your goals for poverty reduction, to meet the needs of the marginalized and the poor in our city. They are the ones who are doing the same great work as large organizations with secured funding. The difference is small organizations depend on dedicated volunteers whose determination and passion are the reason why small organizations survive. I congratulate you. I congratulate our mayor. I congratulate you for your belief in partnership, as the city has already invested $21 million in 93 organizations in our city who strive to meet the needs of poverty reduction. That's because of all of you here today. These organizations are your eyes on the needs of the most vulnerable in our city. They're your hands, your feet in delivering these important services. But there are organizations here today who need that same opportunity, who can strengthen you in your goals for poverty reduction. Small funds make a huge difference for small organizations. Small funds make a huge difference for small organizations. I encourage you to open the door for renewable funding again. Think about it. Think about the difference you can make for small organizations. Do it. Stop thinking, do it. Everybody behind me needs you, everybody. Consider us as an investment. Think of us like you think of small business in our city. Think of us as your backbone, your volunteers, your eyes, your hands, your feet. Think of us. You can do it, and I thank you.
I thank you. We actually don't allow clapping here. But when we had the Salvation Army people here, they learned to do this, so perhaps we could learn this instead. Okay, don't go away. There's a question from Councillor Nussbaum.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mo, for your very impassioned intervention. And there's no question that Hartwood House and its member groups do wonderful things in our city. I do have to mention that I had a great time at your ukulele jam on Friday last week, and my wife now wants a ukulele for Christmas, and it's all your fault. When you talk about the need for extra funding, I'm just interested because I think a number of us around this table are hearing the message loud and clear. I think there's a lot of sympathy and there's a recognition that we have to take this ask very, very seriously. It's something we heard a lot. The 5 councillors who hosted Budget Speak in this room a month and a half ago or so. Do you have a sense, just to help me out, for each of the organizations that you know that would be interested in this kind of on-ramp funding, can you give me, I don't know if this is too hard a question to ask, but can you give me a question of scale?
Well, I just heard a few moments ago about bed bugs and the issue. I wonder why the Community Laundry Cooperative isn't being supported by the city to manage that problem. I think about scale as partnership. I wonder why our eyes aren't on it. We talk so much about small charities working together. I think about $20,000 making a difference in a small organization. Just imagine what $20,000, Elspeth just talked about it a few moments ago, what $20,000 meant to her organization was another part-time staff person. That's the difference that $20,000 makes, and I thank you, Councillor, for asking that question. Let's think about working together. That's what Hartwood does every day. We think about ways to work together. Think about the Community Laundry Cooperative as a partner for you. Think about them. Think about Eco Equitable behind us. Think about all of these organizations and what $20,000 means. It makes a difference for a small organization. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mo.
Thank you, Councillor Nussbaum, and thank you, Mo, for being here. It was a very impassioned plea, and we're listening. Our next speaker is Anouk Bertner, from the Executive Director of Eco Equitable, followed by Brenda Reich, Executive Director of Children at Risk. Can you just press the, oh, no, never mind, it's on.
Okay. Thank you. So my name is Anouk Bertner, and I represent Eco-Equitable today. We are a charity in Vanier. We're a charity and a social enterprise. We serve immigrant and marginalized women, and we do that through sewing. So we teach the hard skills of sewing in terms of using sewing machines, sergers, industrial machines, pattern making, and all that type of thing. And then we also teach a lot of soft skills around working in the Canadian context and creating a community and getting more proficient and comfortable in English, and soon in French. We are also the only textile recycler in the city of Ottawa, and we recycle about 10,000 pounds of fabric per year. And if you've seen our space, you know that that's amazing. We know how to move things around like a puzzle in our space. So I was thinking about what to say today and what would be helpful to you, and what would be different from the other organizations that are coming in today. So Eco-Equitable has been fortunate enough to very rigorously evaluate our work. And we do something called the SROI, which is the social return on investment. And what this does is it measures how our participants are doing. We do a baseline measurement on the first day of class, and then we do this 6 months in and a year later. And what we measure is how our students are receiving income. We measure how often they go to the doctor, when they use food banks, and all of these different metrics of how they're using city services. And what we've discovered is that for every dollar that is put into our Sewing for Jobs program, we return $5.12 to the community. So that's what an investment in Eco-Equitable looks like. And we've been able to quantify this. Sadly, we are able to receive, well, not sadly, so the good part about this is that we are able to receive funding for our projects, but we have a really hard time receiving core funding. Nobody wants to pay for the core. Nobody wants to pay for my salary, for an audit, which is necessary for us to be transparent, for our rent, for our administration, for that stat that I just quoted, for us to evaluate our work and actually improve it. And what is the impact of that? The impact is that we are less efficient. Organizations that don't have core funding, we can provide fewer and less effective services and have fewer outcomes. So what I hope to leave you with is that I hope that you choose to invest in Eco-Equitable so that we can pay you dividends.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. Are there any questions? Seeing none, we appreciate you being here. I have been to Eco-Equitable. I'm very familiar with the great work that you do in our community, so thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Brenda Reich, Executive Director of Children at Risk, followed by Adele Fury, Accessibility Advisory Committee.
Put my timer on so I don't go over. Good morning. Greetings, honorable members of the Community and Protective Services Committee. I think a lot of you around the table are familiar with our charity. I am the executive director, and I'm also the parent of a son who turned 25 yesterday with autism. And I'm here to join the Making Voices Count movement. It was requesting that the City of Ottawa budget for 2018 include several funding initiatives. Specifically for our charity, we are referring to the on-ramp funding that has been previously mentioned several times, $500,000 to be included in grants to programs that do not receive municipal funding, Children at Risk Ottawa being one of them. I went with sort of what I called fast facts in terms of it. Our charity, Children at Risk Ottawa, has served the Ottawa community for almost 39 years. Up to 2002, we received some provincial funding for a program that was amalgamated under the Ottawa Children's Treatment Centre, and since 2002, we've solely supported what we offer on fundraising and donations. Children at Risk Ottawa provides, as I mentioned, programs and services for children diagnosed on the autism spectrum, And Children at Risk Ottawa has over 400 member families, which if you look at an average of about 3 a family, you're looking into the thousands of people that we support. Having raised a son with autism, I can attest it is a family affair indeed. We fund these programs now solely through fundraising and donations. The landscape of fundraising has become extremely challenging, lots of manpower. Third-party opportunities that we used to participate in, like 50-50 hockey sales, are now no longer available. And the Community Project Grants Funding envelope was canceled in 2013. So there is a critical need for programs and services for ASD, Autism Spectrum Disorder children, and demonstrated alone just by the summer day camp that we run, Camp Kaleidoscope. This was our 7th year. We started in 2011. We had 89 weekly spots over 4 weeks. We just completed 5 weeks of camp with a 375% increase in demand for the spots, with 334 weekly spots. We have a funding model that goes to the point of parents paying about 40%, and we raise the additional 60%. I see the challenge, especially with the increase in the minimum wage, of that turning possibly right around or even worse, that we will not have families that will be able to access the programs because they will not have the funding to do that. We calculated for next summer, based on just our counselors alone, a $60,000 increase in staffing costs due to the minimum wage. And I believe that's only the tip of the iceberg, because there will be other costs. All the venues we go out to, all the expenses that we have are going to go up because all those businesses have to pay their staff more as well. And although the City of Ottawa does provide some service for ASD children, I believe it is a 1-to-4 ratio for a lot of the autism camps that they have. Our camp provides a 1-to-1 ratio or 1-to-2. We're frequently given referrals from other city services and other organizations called Children at Risk because we can't serve this child. The question that I have is, if our program ceases to exist, who will serve these families? Currently, families receive some service in July through the Summer Learnings Program in the school board. Councillor Brockington is familiar with that because he has been on the school board. That program has been in jeopardy for several years and has been significantly reduced in the service. We have many children that attend our camp now that were requested to leave that program because they couldn't provide the proper supports for them. So we're looking right now at a one-time grant of $500,000. It looks like it may not be included in the 2018 budget. I'm still pushing to find small amounts, as Mo mentioned, and looking to be added to the envelope then for consistent funding each year and renewable funding. It's in our name. We are Children at Risk Ottawa. We're serving the community. We're serving the families. And yet, we have no core funding. Thank you.
Okay, there's something happened with the screen. Thank you very much. Is there anyone wanted to ask a question to the delegations? Seeing none, we'll move along. Thank you. To Adele Fury, Accessibility Advisory Committee. And Adele will be followed by Eileen Leo and Rhea Bachman from the Somerset West Community Health Center.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity to provide input with respect to the proposed Community and Protective Services Committee budget on behalf of the Accessibility Advisory Committee. My name is Adele Fury, and I am a member of the AAC. Pursuant to the Accessibility for Ontarios with Disabilities Act, the primary role of the AAC is to provide feedback and advice to Council on the programs, policies, and services that impact persons with disabilities and seniors. We want to reiterate our appreciation for the long-standing and ongoing commitment to accessibility that has been shown by Council, City staff, and particularly the Accessibility Office and Councillor Caudry. Last year, we were concerned that the new organizational structure at the City and any changes to the Accessibility Office could result in lessening this commitment to accessibility. We are pleased to say that our fears have not come to fruition. In fact, we are pleased that accessibility has been incorporated into the everyday operations of the city. For example, the city is streamlining and standardizing its approach in seeking the committee's feedback on projects to ensure that accessibility is taken into consideration at the outset. We have noted that the city has responded to our recommendation to include persons with disabilities in communications material, even on the budget documents. We want to continue to work with the city as a consultation resource to ensure that consideration of accessibility in all the city's projects, policies, practices, and procedures. As you know, in Ontario, 15.4% of the population reported having a disability, which is over 1.6 million people. In Ottawa, 1 in 5 residents report some level of disability. We also know that the occurrence of disability rises proportionately with age, and that as a society, we are getting older. We will all eventually benefit from a fully accessible and barrier-free city. We have reviewed the 2018 draft Community and Protective Services Committee budget and would like to offer the following observations. We are pleased that the draft budget includes $4.86 million for upgrades to the city's 4 long-term care facilities: Peter D. Clark Long-Term Care Home, Gary J. Armstrong, Centre d'accueil Champagne, and Carlton Lodge. Increasing the funding to $23.1 million for community agencies ensures that our most vulnerable residents have increased access to the basics, such as food programs, day programs, counseling, and support services. The addition of $100,000 for funding for rural community support agencies enables these agencies to increase transportation services for seniors and people with disabilities in the rural parts of the city. We are pleased that the continued funding of the older adult plan. Some of the projects funded in 2017 related to accessibility, including allocating additional funds to provide dental care to low-income people with disabilities and seniors, installing benches on existing sidewalks and pathways frequented by older adults and people with disabilities, and the printing of the older adult activity guide in English and French. Madam Chair, I would like to take this opportunity to highlight a few areas where our committee feel it can continue to provide constructive assistance. We support the Gotta Go initiative to ensure that there are more toilets available throughout the city and in public areas. We need an increased focus on reducing homelessness. We know that many of our homeless population have mental health issues and need access to support services for their daily needs. And we would like to focus on on-ramp funding for organizations representing people with disabilities and seniors who are not currently in receipt of funding from the city. Madam Chair, on behalf of the Accessibility Advisory Committee, I would like to express our appreciation for the long-standing and ongoing commitment to accessibility that has been shown by council, city staff, and particularly the Accessibility Office. We would also like to offer our continued service as a consultation resource supporting accessibility and inclusion in all city projects, policies, practices, and processes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ferry. Any questions? Councillor Kadri.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you very much, Ms. Ferry, for your presentation this morning. And I also want to add my thanks to the committee for doing the work that you guys have done over the last couple of years on the accessibility issues. And you mentioned a little bit about funding, but how much do you value as an advisory committee the support that you get from city on an ongoing basis, does that have any value to the Accessibility Advisory Committee?
I think it's incredible the support that we get. You listen to what we need. One of the issues that we brought forward to you was the onslaught of material that we were getting with very short turnaround for our comments. And you listened to that and supported us and have now been developing a more consistent approach to providing us the materials.
Thank you for that, Ms. Fury, and I would, on that behalf, I also want to thank this committee and the chair for supporting the Accessibility Advisory Committee over the last couple of years and continue the good work. So thank you again for your presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Kadri, and thank you again, Ms. Fury. We'll move on then to Aileen Leo and Rhea Bachman from the Somerset West Community Health Centre. They will be followed by Jay Garlow, co-founder of Hidden Harvest Ottawa. And is Laura Bennett here yet? Okay, so we're going to set aside Mr. Garlow because he's going to co-present with Laura Bennett and she's not here, so we'll just hold that one. So following Aileen and Rhea will be Margaret Fallis, Community Laundry Co-op.
Good morning, and thank you so much for this opportunity. And may growling voices or growling stomachs not drown out our presentation. My name is Rhea Bachman. I'm a resident of Somerset Ward and a member of the Advocacy Committee at Somerset West Community Health Centre. Again, we thank you for the opportunity to comment on the draft 2018 city budget. We support people and communities to enjoy the best possible health and well-being by providing primary health care and social services and addressing the social determinants of health. We remove barriers to services for people vulnerable because of their age, income, abilities, sexual orientation, gender identity, and language or culture. The Ottawa Neighborhood Study for West Centretown notes 25% of residents are low income. Over 33% spend over 30% of their income on housing. There are almost 1,500 social or affordable housing units, which is over 6 times the Ottawa average. And we have Ottawa's highest concentration of rooming houses. Somerset West receives important core funding from the city to support playgroups and parent support for vulnerable families, a program for frail, elderly, and isolated Chinese-speaking seniors, crisis intervention, information and referral, and practical assistance, and the Rochester Heights Community House. These critical community services have current budgets that are unable to meet increasing community need. We appreciate the support provided by the city, and we also acknowledge the additional $675,000 included in the draft budget for community agencies to address cost of living adjustments and the minimum wage increase, and an additional base funding of $325,000 to support agencies currently receiving funding from the city to address complex and increasing needs. We applaud the city moving in the right direction to invest in social infrastructure. However, last year the city reintroduced a $500,000 sustainability fund for community agencies, which received $2.8 million in requests for support. This shows the magnitude of community need and the importance of a long-term, sustainable way to address these complex and increasing needs. Accordingly, we ask the city to commit to a long-term, sustainable investment in social infrastructure in the next long-range financial plan. As part of making voices count, we also asked for a new on-ramp fund for community groups not currently receiving city funding to access more stable funding to address emerging needs. Unfortunately, this is not in the draft budget. While Somerset West Community Health Center receives city funds for programs and services, new initiatives have emerged to address gaps. For example, food access programs such as the Good Food Markets and the Market Mobile continue to have no access to city funding and are at risk. Accordingly, we asked the city to support a new on-ramp fund to address these new and emerging community needs. Aileen will now continue the presentation.
Okay, and Eileen, you have about 30 seconds.
Yes, I appreciate that. We'd just like to add briefly the issue of rooming houses to our presentation. It's a critical issue for us. I hope councillors have all had a chance to read this report, which is a follow-up to our report that was released last year. The same problems persist with regards to mold, pest infestations we've heard about, cockroaches, bed bugs, etc. This new report talks about the fact that people who live in rooming houses can't afford to buy food, so they frequent soup kitchens, food banks, etc. We do know that there's a bylaw review of rooming houses coming up that's been put in motion early in the new year. We urge this committee to ensure that licensed rooming houses in Ottawa as a whole, but particularly in our catchment area, which Rhea mentioned has the highest concentration of rooming houses in the city, conform to property standards. There are some good rooming houses. There are many, many bad ones that continue.
I'm going to have to hold you there.
Yeah,
but
I appreciate that.
Thank you. There is a question for you,
time.
so maybe you'll be able to finish. Councillor McKinney.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Rhea and Eileen, for coming out and talking about the work that Somerset West Community Health Centre does and sort of give us an idea of the community that it exists within. Just on the rooming houses, I've went out and on a few occasions gone out with Somerset West with the public health nurses and visited some of the less desirable rooming houses, because as you point out, some of them are very good. The ones that work very well, but the ones that don't are living conditions that no one should have to ever live in. I often think that rather than doing sleep outs for homelessness, we should spend a night either at a shelter or in a rooming house and see what it's really like to be homeless in the city of Ottawa. Just on the rooming house, the bylaw, you did pick up on it, but we will be revisiting the bylaw. The report that you put out was excellent. It really shows the need for dedicated services to bylaw, from bylaw for rooming houses, and the need for us to make sure that those landlords are living up to their end of the deal. Could you just provide for the committee just kind of a summary of what exactly a bad rooming house looks like and where they are located within the catchment area?
Thank you, Councillor Kenny, for the question, and thank you also for your support of this issue. We're very grateful for that. So, very briefly, a rooming house, I live on Bell Street North. There are many on that particular street. Many are infested with bed bugs, cockroaches, rats, mice. Many have mold, which is toxic. Many have broken pipes, so they have no access to water. Many have no heating for long periods in the winter. There will be the one rooming house we heard had 11 people sharing one bathroom. So you can imagine what that's like. Unfortunately, some landlords harass their tenants if they complain, so there is no ability to launch a complaint without fear of retribution. So in terms of what we would like to see, we would like to see a complaint system that provides support for tenants to launch a complaint without fear of retribution, or to have a third party launch a complaint on their behalf, because some tenants don't even have access to a phone. So housing support agencies, that sort of thing. And also for the city to ensure that property standards are met on a continuous basis, not just when their license comes up for renewal once a year, and then things continue to slide back to the deplorable circumstances in which they were.
Thank you, Councillor McKinney, and thank you both for being here today. We appreciate it. We'll move on then to Margaret Fallis from the Community Laundry Co-op, and Ms. Fallis will be followed by John Sobey, Ottawa Firefighters Association.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm a founding member and board chair of the Community Laundry Co-op, and also a member of the Heartwood House Board, where the co-op operates along with 19 other nonprofits. As a small grassroots charity, we've been living the operational funding dilemma that's being discussed today since the Laundry Co-op was founded in 1999. The need for for clean clothes was identified at the People's Hearings on Poverty, which were dealing with major budget cuts to social services back in the 90s. At the Laundry Co-op, we provide laundry for $2 a load, wash, dry, and soap, counseling for our members with referrals to other agencies, and job preparation and training through our contract laundry service social enterprise. But what's really exciting about the Laundry Co-op is the vibrant and supportive community that our members have developed over the past 18 years. You can see it when member volunteers with problems of their own feel good about helping others as they work at the front desk, or when someone who otherwise might never get out of her house is having a cup of coffee and a chat while their clothes are in the wash. One of our new Canadian members even donated laundry supplies out of his first paycheck on a new job. We mean a lot to the people who come to the co-op, and they mean a lot to each other. And the need is growing. Almost 80 new members have joined the co-op this year alone. We're very excited about a new initiative we have underway this year. One of our biggest successes has always been helping new Canadians get a foothold in the Ottawa community. They begin by coming to the co-op to wash their children's clothes. They receive counseling, referrals, and other services, and the help and friendship of the staff and members. They can move on to volunteering or taking part in contract laundry service, social enterprise, where they get work preparation and training and Canadian job experience on their resumes. So we've been very anxious to reach out to new refugees since the Syrians began coming in to Ottawa a couple of years ago. But due to decreased funding, we've not had the resources to do so. This fall, we received funding from Harry P. Ward, Ontario Citizenship and Immigration, and the Ottawa Community Foundation so that our project, Building Community Through Clean Clothes, can finally get off the ground. But there's a catch. This project is a perfect example of the operational funding issues that the discussions have been about. Our grants are short-term. They'll cover the costs for startup this year, but what's going to happen when the project's over? New members we recruit will still need the support, and once the lines of communication are open, there will be more arriving. How are we supposed to keep them going? While there's money for new initiatives around, there's almost no funding source available to fund daily operating costs. We're trying hard. For the first time in 18 years, we've had to raise the cost of a load of laundry. The income that we generate from our social enterprise has risen slightly this year and covers 20% of our costs. We're applying for a Trillium grant in February to revitalize our laundry social enterprise, but the increase won't be enough to resolve our financial problems because for a supportive employment job training enterprise, an increase in volume to help more members will also involve a significant increase in cost. We're also undertaking a mail campaign to begin to develop a donor base, but that's not our mission, our area of expertise, and it's certainly not efficient for small charities like us to be running these campaigns individually. As you've heard today, many of us small grassroots service providers are struggling to survive. Some minimum input of operational funding is necessary to ensure our continued delivery of these essential services with a very good return on investment. Without it, not only will most vulnerable members of our community lose more of the services they depend on, but Ottawa will also lose access to a huge resource, the volunteer effort, expertise, and compassion that play a significant role in operating these charities. I urge you to support the increase included in the budget for funded groups and at least some funds for the ramp this year to support organizations while the study of the sector is underway. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. There is a question, Councillor Kakish.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. What is your cost of operations? What does it cost for you to operate your facility on a monthly or annual basis?
Our annual budget this year has been $60,000, but we've been operating with at least a half-time staff missing. So a good budget for us would be around $80,000 a year.
Okay, and is that mostly for the FTE, or does that include the hydro and the bills? So I'm not sure. Do you pay rent? Do you have an agreement with?
We pay rent. We have affordable rent because we're at Hartwood House, but we do have to pay rent, utilities. Our staff is of course one of the major expenses for sure.
Okay.
And one of the most important resources too.
Okay, and you had mentioned that in 18 years this is the first time that you've raised your rates.
That's right.
Correct?
That's right.
So you mentioned a few organizations like the community foundations and others where you get some of your loans and that, but historically, have you ever had a consistent source of funding, or do you always have to apply to grants every year to sustain your work?
We always have to apply for grants, and we spend most of our time doing that, which, as Anouk said earlier, means that right now we haven't got the resources to do the kind of work we'd like to with the laundry co-op, to look at the program, improve the program, and so on. So we're always getting grants, and as I say, most of those grants are project focused. So you're almost coming up with projects to keep operating, and it doesn't make good sense.
Okay, so can you explain to me what some of the projects are? Because you had mentioned that you had one now this year, so you can't get grants just to operate?
No.
Okay.
So the big one right now is the refugee one, and it's wonderful because we've got funding. For example, we got funding from multicultural citizenship and multiculturalism, and that grant is for 4 months. So that gets us started. Then the community foundation money will probably cover the rest of that year, but that's sort of incremental work. How it's actually working is that we're able to keep our current one staff has been working 4 days a week for the last 2 years, and that's our only staff, and she's working with the members all the time. With this grant, we're able to up her to 5 days so that she can do this extra work involved with the refugees. And then our big question is, okay, when next year's over, when that funding's gone, how do we keep her on to keep doing the good work she is? And to be perfectly honest, right now, we don't have anybody doing management. The board is doing that, and we cannot survive that way. It's just not possible.
Okay, and the money that comes in from the machines, what does that pay for? Does that just pay for the bills come in, or how do you use your
The way we use that money, our members who are doing some of the contracts to get their work experience get a small bit of money from that. Most of it, it has to be small because they're mostly Ontario Works or ODSP people. So some of the money goes to that. It goes to keeping the machines going and so on. But because our people that are doing the work need so much support, it's not something that makes us a lot of money to operate anything beyond that program.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
I would really like a question about bed bugs.
What do you want to tell me about bed bugs?
I'd like to tell you that we were involved in a program with the John Howard Society when the city was funding a bed bug cleanup, and it was a great program, and we did a good job at it. So if something like that's ever starting again, we'd really like to be involved.
Can you talk briefly about that program?
I can't recall a whole lot about it, but I think John Howard was going in and doing the cleanup in the houses and packing up the clothes, and then they brought the clothes to us and we washed them. And we had all the mechanisms in place to deal with bed bugs, because it's a whole different process when you're dealing with them.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Kakish, and thank you, Ms. Fallis, for being here. Our next speaker is John Sobey, and Mr. Sobey will be followed by Violaine Gabrielle, fondatrice et directrice générale de Regroupement Affaires Femmes.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and fellow council colleagues. First of all, I'd like to say it's certainly been a pleasure this morning listening to the other presenters and to be in such fine company as these people have messaged their concerns going forward with 2018. Only hope I can meet up to their level. With that, Madam Chair, by resolution, Ottawa City Council is committed to demonstrate fiscal prudency throughout the 2018 budget proposal process. Most realize this to be a daunting challenge for a growing city by population, with many spanning urban, suburban, and rural areas. With that, Council calls on its citizens and stakeholders to engage in this process with recommendations that certainly demonstrate both fiscal responsibility and efficient service delivery. Ottawa's firefighters understand this endeavor and offer their suggestion to ensure timely and efficient service to our citizens and visitors to the nation's capital, while mindful of Council's approach to plan for a responsible budget and prepare for unforeseen circumstances. Ottawa's 977 members of the Ottawa Professional Firefighter Association have been and continue to perform their functions and duties related to fire suppression, hazardous material response, technical rescue such as open ice and swift water rescue, high angle rescue, collapse and trench, fire inspections and prevention and investigations, as well as public education, communications, and of course emergency medical services. When off duties, firefighters perform many charitable and community services across our city. As I present to you at this moment, our members are downtown donating toys, presenting toys for the Toy Mountain, toys collected from our 2 Santa parades, both downtown and in the East End. In our EMS capacity at medical emergencies, Ottawa firefighters work effectively with all our first responders, both our paramedics and police. Ottawa's paramedics are tasked to respond and provide pre-hospital medical responses by ambulance, but as well are further deployed to other services such as marine, tactical, bicycle, as single role duty paramedics. As this budget identifies, the increase in the growing and aging population, coupled by the residential commercial growth throughout our city, places a tremendous service delivery pressure and stress on timely EMS delivery. These issues are not isolated to Ottawa, and the Ontario government and the Ontario legislature recognize these challenges across the province and have reacted. Introduced in 2017, the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care's Patient First Healthcare Action Plan, known as Bill 160, provides several changes to the Ambulance Act with the intent to improve service through effective ambulance communications with local 911 established, patient deferral options for paramedics, and utilizing firefighter paramedics who respond on a fire apparatus. Currently, professional firefighters who are trained and have qualified as paramedics are restricted by statute from using their knowledge, medical expertise, and skills to provide pre-hospital emergency patient care as a paramedic when they respond on a fire truck. A professional firefighter paramedic can assist the city in attaining paramedic response time targets and appropriate medical care to the patient for less the cost, as those members are already serving in the fire service. Additionally, Ottawa firefighters can provide value added with swift medical emergency response using the technological advantages of what is known as simultaneous notification dispatch systems when mandated across the province to ensure appropriate and immediate response to EMS providers such as the ambulance and fire services, particularly during life-threatening emergency responses. Today in Ottawa, our response system does not have the simultaneous notification. A certified professional firefighter paramedic responding medical emergency calls will utilize the capacity in the fire service and the advantage of strategic geographic positioning to reduce the need for repeated additional funding increases to ambulance services. This, we believe, is a superior tool that will result in a greater service delivery and a more efficient cost structure, both at the provincial and municipal government levels. A cost analysis was conducted by PricewaterhouseCoopers Canada, has demonstrated that the firefighter-paramedic model will result in lower-level demands on the public purse. The number of calls canceled by ambulance
Mr. Sobey, you have about 10 seconds left.
Thank you. While Bill 160 moves through legislation, the Ministry of Health will proceed with a trial application amongst Ontario municipalities seeking municipal cities for a pilot project. We certainly encourage this committee and council to consider that notion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sobey. Any questions? Councillor Kakish.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Soap, for the presentation. What are the timelines on the on that pilot project and municipalities being able to participate?
Through the chair, thank you, Councillor. Currently, the legislation 160 is at committee. It's proceeding through, following which will be a clause by clause. Then it'll move forward for the fourth and final reading at the legislature. In the meantime, the Ministry of Health is working on the trial application process and all things that need to be captured for that process, working with all the stakeholders, the firefighters, fire chiefs, the paramedics, and so forth across the province.
Okay, and I know we had this discussion briefly at Community and Protective Services Committee a few months back as well, and I think so we're waiting or watching closely on some of the developments that are happening at Queen's Park and how we may, if at all, participate in that as well. So I'll be watching that closely as well and stay in touch with the stakeholders as well.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Kakish, and thank you, Mr. Sobey. Our next speaker is Violaine Gabriel, and Violaine will be followed by Luc Ouellette from the Orleans Cumberland Resource Centre. Is Violaine here? She's left? Has she left? Okay, the councillors are getting hungry. Okay, so we'll stand that one down and we'll go to Luc Ouellette. It's 20 after. We're just about halfway through our delegation. So I'm thinking if we aren't finished our delegations by 1, which is probably very optimistic, we'll break at 1 for lunch. Is that okay? Okay, so we'll break at 1 for lunch. Mr. Ouellette, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mrs. Chair. Tout d'abord, je veux vous remercier de l'opportunité que vous...
First of all, I would like to thank you for giving us the opportunity of giving you our comments la semaine dernière.
To discuss the budget with our two councillors, Councillor Blais and Councillor Monette, who came at our meeting. And we're really proud to have their support and our discussion with them. We are the largest multi-service center located east of Ottawa, and we welcome and help thousands of people every year. Last year, we have seen an increase of 11% in the number of people who use our services for the food bank, counseling, crisis intervention, mental health issues, and financial advice, among many others. An increase of 22% in the last 5 years. Despite the best efforts and innovation brought forward by our board of directors, staff, and volunteers, there is increased pressure to respond to the needs of marginalized and vulnerable people, needs that are too often overlooked. Given the increase in the low-income population over the last 5 years, and the fact that most of the city-funded agencies must respond to this growth, our sector needs adequate financial resources to respond to this growth. Our social infrastructure is the organizations, services, people, and networks that support the health and well-being of our communities. Ottawa's social infrastructures includes important services we need like housing, childcare, community services, and public transit. Result from the 2016 of city-funded community and social services providers showed that Ottawa's most vulnerable residents were facing longer wait times and service reduction. A 2016 survey of 66 social service providers who received funds from Ottawa shows that longer wait times and program stretches beyond capacity, as 93% of respondents saw demands for services increase between 17% and 300%. Since 2012, our center saw an increase of 24% of people who receive food assistance at our food bank, an increase of 87% since the last 10 years. Our intake and crisis response program have seen an important increase in terms of individuals served and added tasks such as application for summer day camps, subsidy for children, back-to-school supplies, LEAP applications, Ontario Electricity Support Program applications, emergency food cupboard, Contact Ottawa, Well Baby supplies, Christmas exchange, and I save you many, many more. We're also seeing a significant increase in the number of individuals experiencing complex life situation requiring more time from our intake workers. Since our incorporation in 1988, our center fundraised over $3.2 million in our community in the East End. This money augments the demand in the city programs, and where the cost of the reducing services would have been to the further detriment of those already vulnerable and or at risk. Be assured that where we can, we will continue to do this. Cependant, depuis les quelques dernières années, nous avons littéralement...
However, recently we hit a brick wall. In spite of the huge generosity of our community, who implemented a lowering of the rents, having more grants, as well as considerable donations from members of the society, we have a hard time facing the pressure. Nous sommes ravis.
2017 budget. We're also pleased that the city recognizes the importance in investing in social infrastructure in the 2018 budget. This is great news and going in the right direction. The draft budget proposes to increase funding to social services agency by $675,000, and the budget also includes an additional base funding of $325,000 to support social service agencies to address complex needs and increasing demands for service in our community. However, and as mentioned before me today, given that $2.8 million was requested last year to address complex needs and increasing demands for services, we are still falling behind. This shows the size of the problem and the need to continue to increase in the funding for the city social infrastructure. En conclusion, comme nous l'avons aussi mentionné, nos
we told others the investment in those services is extremely important because we want more and more people to be free from poverty, and we would like to continue investing in social services given and provided by the City of Ottawa. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Ouellette. Are there any questions for the delegation? Thank you for being here. We appreciate your presentation. We'll move on then to Joan Koyek, Chair of Gotta Go, and Joan will be followed by Diane Urquhart, Executive Director of the Social Planning Council of Ottawa.
We have a PowerPoint, Madam Chair.
Okay.
I'd like to introduce Christina Ropke, who's a member of our core team and undertook a major study for us on the use of Dundonald Park by people and can answer questions if need be. Open accessible public toilets are an issue for everyone. They're a place where people can get away from the bed bugs in their apartment. They're an issue for homeless people, certainly who can't have access to toilets for a good part of the day. They're an issue for women with children. They're an issue for pregnant women. And they're an issue for the 7,000 people in our city who have identified as having Crohn's and colitis. These are very, very serious issues, and they speak to quality of life. This is an equity and inclusion issue. It means that in the surveys we've done, only 5% of seniors use public parks. We know why. They can't go to the toilet there. It's a really important issue if we're going to improve people's quality of life. We do know that parks can be made much more accessible for people for longer. People will spend more time there and enjoy the air much longer if they have toilets. The design can be attractive, safe, and economic. These are now considered champagne toilets, I think. And in terms of what we've been asking the city for, we've been reducing our ask considerably year by year. What we're proposing at the Eagleson Park and Ride is a Kazuba dry toilet, which is a composting toilet, but even that one is not what we're asking for this time. We are asking for something like this portable at the Herald Place. Councillor Brockington's well aware of it. He helped pay for half the cost of it last summer. The rest was paid for by the Community Association. 2 years ago, Got2Go paid for it. The cost for having an accessible portable toilet for 4 months at a splash pad was $580 when it was cleaned twice a week. We had an artist paint it up. The neighbors have been very pleased with it. It's made a huge difference in terms of health issues, in terms of use of the park. There are daycare providers who bring children there who haven't had access to a toilet. Now they have one, and for 4 months of the year it makes a big difference. So we are asking at this point for 20 splash pads in the city to be equipped with accessible portable toilets for 4 months during the summer. The locations would be determined by the Ottawa Neighborhood Survey and as requested by communities, and it would cost less than $600 per toilet for the 4 months. And we're also asking that at 20 sports fields in the city on a pilot basis, we provide accessible portable toilets where there's no other toilet available, again for 4 months. This could be on a cost recovery basis from organized sports team that use the fields. We've had examples even from our own core team membership of a mom whose child was going to Capital City Tennis in a tennis yard outside a school. The school was closed. Parents were told to have their children pee before they left the house because they would be there for a while and there was no facilities. This is totally unacceptable. It means that the people who don't have the ability to hold it for 3 or 4 hours are paying the price and aren't able to access any of these community facilities. They won't be able to take transit, they can't play in the parks, they can't take their kids to the splash pads, and we think this is completely unacceptable. And for a cost of less than $25,000 for a summer, all sorts of more people would be able to use these parks. And that's our presentation, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much for your presentation. There is a question, Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your presentations and for your strong advocacy on this item. I think you are exactly right when you say it's a quality of life issue. It is. There are numerous parks in my ward that host soccer matches at night, in the summer months, baseball, and there is no washroom nearby. And guess what happens in the bushes? Not just number ones.
Yeah.
So certainly an ongoing discussion I've been having with some of my community associations about what we'd like to do in 2018. If for whatever reason council did not move ahead due to financial challenges, does Got2Go have any partnerships or any other entities the city could work with on sponsorships? Are you aware of any corporate or community groups that would like to co-sponsor anything that you could help us get this done?
Well, the community, we don't have formal incorporation ourselves.
Right.
When we put the toilet at Harold Place, our own members kicked in the money for it. We do know that a lot of community associations and recreational teams already put in money towards portables for the summer. But in fact, most of that money's coming from the city anyway. So it would make a lot more sense for the city to recognize a responsibility for undertaking this. When splash pads were put in to replace wading pools, even the employees were lost, and that meant that the toilet that was there for the employees and could be used in an emergency was gone. No, we don't have anybody lined up that could do that, and I don't think it's our responsibility to do it, quite frankly.
Fair enough. No, I agree. And you know, you said mothers with young kids. As a single dad, I plan my routes with my kids when we go out, not just in the neighborhood, but even when we come walking downtown, because there aren't a lot of perhaps bathroom-friendly establishments that will allow non-customers to come in, and it's always that challenge. The thing about splash pads is as soon as those little toes touch water, there's an issue. And it's hard to bring your childcare group, which you've just arrived for the day, back to a washroom nearby without having to knock on someone's door. So, Madam Chair, all this to say, I'll be following up on these issues when we get to the staff time.
Thank you, Councillor Brockington, and thank you very much for being here. We'll move on then to Diane Urquhart, Executive Director of the Social Planning Council of Ottawa, and Diane will be followed by Guiyang Zhang, English Chinese Parenting Group.
Am I on?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so I think we've been hearing compelling delegations all morning about the growing needs, the growing demands, the pressures, and we're all in this together. We understand the pressures around the city, they're on the mainstream agencies, and they're on the small groups. The fact of the matter is we have no ability in the city to meet these needs if we don't change the paradigm a little bit here. We can't just split this pie, the same pie, you know, in some different way and make this go away. The needs are expanding and we have to come up with a different way. So I'm here with an ask, it's true, but I'm also here with an offer, and I'm hoping that we can come together on something here. I'd like to speak specifically to the issue of the on-ramp funding. We're hearing how important that was. I've been around in the Social Planning Council for a while, and we were there when that, when the renewable funding, when the non-renewable funding, the project funding stream did have a window open to renewable funding, and I think we might have been the last organization that got in through that door. At this point, our renewable funding is $40,000 a year, and we leverage that to $1 million budget, of which I can tell you in this year, $828,000 is specifically going back to other services in the community through a partnership model where they're using that to address their needs. So with little bits of funding, we can make a big difference. With the on-ramp funding, when the non-renewable funding was cut from the budget, it was devastating for the heart of the heart of the community, which we've heard is the small informal organizations, the grassroots groups, and so on. We cannot meet the needs in the city if they are not enabled to play an active role in meeting needs. They're keen, they make things happen, and they're essential to the social infrastructure. They are profoundly impacted by changes that have come. Downloading comes to them after it goes past you, and they're picking up on all kinds of fronts. Funding streams have changed. Immediately when that funding was lost, United Way changed its funding criteria as well. Trillium has changed its funding criteria in the meantime, and Community Foundation is now going to impact funding, which also will impact the small groups. So they have less access to resources. Also with funding models, which do exist, many of them require that you put some contribution in. So if they have a little bit of money they can put on the table, they can leverage other resources. And we work with groups to do that. So I want to talk a little bit about scale, because there have been a couple of questions about that. We work with many groups. In particular, I want to speak about grassroots ethnocultural groups, particularly those serving seniors. For several years, we've been working with them on a microgrant model, and periodically we get federal funding. We currently have a grant where we are providing $138,000 of micro grants to ethnocultural groups. They get between $2,000 and $10,000 a year to support their activities. And just to give you an idea of what happened last year, with $138,000 that went to them through federal funds, micro grants that came through us with no skim off the top, they served 1,598 isolated seniors in 9,609 encounters. They had 786 programs, 786 programs with $138,000. And they had a minimum of 928 volunteers active in this. So what we're talking about is a cost of $86.36 per isolated senior for them to be engaged through the year. I think this is the best value for money you're going to see, and I think we have to support this. So let's turn the paradigm. I want to turn it a half turn, and then I want to turn it a full term, and I wouldn't be very long. So number one, it's not just about getting money, it's about contribution. So you're hearing the contribution they make, the social return on investment, that kind of thing that small groups make. That's true. They also enable efficacy in the existing services, Ottawa Public Health, the mainstream services, and so on, by being the key bridge between very isolated people who are marginalized and others. And I'm not just talking about the ethnocultural groups at this point, I'm talking about grassroots groups, neighborhood groups, disability groups, and the ethnocultural groups. We believe that they actually save money. The navigation role, for example, that the grassroots groups play with respect to the healthcare system, we feel if there was an evaluation done on that, would demonstrate that it's reducing emergency costs, both at the emergency rooms, but also in terms of paramedic and police calls, because they get called first. They also are investing, so a lot of the money they're able to resource, to leverage and to get from their communities.
And your time's up, so if you could wrap up.
Okay, so we know the need, we know the opportunity, here's the offer. The Social Planning Council, it feels so strongly about this fund, we will put $100,000 on the table, and we challenge you to contribute to that. Let's come up with a model where we can make this happen. Maybe we can't have the whole thing that's being asked for, but let's have an enabling vehicle that there is some funds that groups not getting funds can get to, and we'll put $100,000 on the table in this calendar year for that.
So is that, just to be clear, oh, look at this, silent clapping. Is that a matching fund to the city? How would that work?
Well, I'd like it to at least be matching. I'd like a little more than that, but I'd live with matching, you know? And let's make sure, and then let's do a pilot. We'll also throw in an evaluation if you want. We have an evaluation service, and let's demonstrate the value of this, the social return on investment for this, and grow this fund. And it can become a platform for leveraging additional resources. If my agency can take $40,000 and translate it to $1 million that's investing back in this community, what could we do between us with $200,000 and the weight of the city and the expertise of the city, and then, you know, the innovation of the groups on the ground? I think the sky's the limit. I think that's the 100% turn. I'm putting it on the table, and I hope you'll take me up on it.
Okay, thank you. We have some questions now. So, Councillor Nisman.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you very much for the intervention and for the offer. Let me just ask a couple of questions so that I better understand it. Firstly, would you see, if we were able to find matching funds in the 2018 budget for that kind of program, would you see that being something which the city itself could administer, or what are you imagining that being? Where would the funds sit in terms of how they would be distributed?
We pick where it's most appropriate for it to sit. We're open to that.
Okay, so
whatever's best to make it happen and have transparency,
right,
you know, and fairness, that's where it needs to sit.
One of the criticisms, I guess, that I've heard from those who don't support on-ramp funding, and I'm not one of them, but I want to see if I can articulate the argument, is if you start a program like that, you create expectations, and then the idea would be you lock yourself into future funding. So how would you respond to that comment? Do you see this kind of partnership that you're putting on the table this afternoon as something that would be ongoing? You talked about an evaluation. If an evaluation concluded that there would be changes and that certain groups might not qualify who qualified in year one, from the experience that you have in this field, is that okay? How do you respond to the concern that once you start something, it becomes very difficult to exit that space?
Well, I'd approach that a couple of ways. First of all, I certainly understand about expectations. We've been termed the organization for homeless issues, so they also download to us. People come to us when they have no other options and when funding cuts have resulted in core services, being eliminated. So I know about that. But to be more specific, I think maybe the on-ramp thing, the language of on-ramp is a bit concerning. If we're to think about this as project funding, let's commit to project funding, okay? And not panic that we're talking about permanent funding to the city and, we're opening the floodgates to that. But that we are enabling funds for new projects that we can demonstrate they're needed, cost-effective. Then let's work together to leverage other resources to enable that. So maybe, like a lot of what we do is we incubate and it goes off independently. It's got other resources from elsewhere, everything's fine. I don't have to own everything, the city doesn't have to own everything, but it becomes a platform where instead of saying the bank's tapped out, we can't do anything about it, we're putting in. It's a stone soup approach. So I think maybe the on-ramp language is making people nervous that we're talking about committing and raising expectations for permanent funding to be opened up. There's going to be a whole review, so that's fine. We look at what that is. But the issue is the loss of project funding. Even that being a route to permanent funding was only open for a little period of time. For many, many years, it was just project funding. And I think we can leverage other money that can populate part of that fund. The other thing is, just in terms of fairness and who gets and all of that kind of stuff, that's standard. All of the funders deal with that. We deal with that in our organization. In my micro grants, I deal with that. We're serving 21 organizations at this point in time that get micro funds. There are many more that come to us and are waiting for funds, and I don't have enough resources for them. So we try to leverage other resources, and we work strategically with people to do that. And then we partner, and if someone gets something somewhere else, we can take them off and bring someone new on. So but if there's no platform for it, you can't even get there. And that's what I'm saying. I actually don't think you have to be afraid of it. I think we can contain this and be very clear. Make it project funding, open it up, innovative projects, and part of that is where does it strategically open up routes to external funding that can come in from senior jurisdictions where it becomes a pilot that's attracting other resources to meet needs that we're stagnated on now. I think that could work.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's very helpful for me, your answer, to picture or envision this as a project as opposed to core funding. I think that's extremely helpful and actually responds to some of the things that I've heard from people who may not understand that would be a way of getting around the problem. So thank you very much for that answer, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Nussbaum, and Councillor McKinney.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ms. Urquhart. Councillor Nussbaum did bring up some of the questions that I was going to ask, some of the clarification around this. Our on-ramp funding is actually, historically, it's just been project funding, and that's how agencies then, through evaluation, and if the need continues, can get on to sustainable funding. So good to make that clear that this is not, we're not asking for you to, or you're not asking for us, and if we take up your challenge, which I hope we do, I certainly am very supportive. I think that it's important to remember that's what agencies understand that as well, and agencies have been in this business for a long time, and they understand what was lost in 2010. So I just want to clarify then the challenge to us, the offer to us, would sort of give us an opportunity to bridge that time, because what's difficult today is and for months, years really, we've heard from many, many organizations who address real needs in our communities who don't have that opportunity for eventually stable funding, but even project funding to begin with. And what we hear from staff is that, you know, we are going to be looking at that, and we need to evaluate and come up with a full process. So that's good news, but it's pushing off the answer to what we need today. So this is essentially a bridge to that, to say, you know, we've got, if we can find a way of matching that funding, we can bridge that time where we're not leaving our most vulnerable really waiting for that type of project funding. But it also enables us to, like you say, you know, when we demonstrate needs and we do that evaluation, it also provides opportunity for agencies that we know in our community work miracles with their money to continue to do that. Is that a fair assessment of what the offer is?
Yes, for sure. And I'm not suggesting that that micro grants or small project funds resolve all the issues we're talking about. There has to be a longer term, more systemic discussion about that. But I don't think it's an either or, and I think that's where we're kind of positioning it now. I think this is very doable, and we can demonstrate good success and meet needs right now on the ground with this, as we've seen with the groups, and at the same time then have time to properly consider the broader questions and how we can collaborate on that, you know.
Thank you. Challenge accepted.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McKinney. Seeing no further questions, thank you very much, Mr. Ricard, and thank you for that generous offer. We will talk about it with staff. We'll go then to Guiyang Zhang from the English-Chinese Parenting Group, and Guiyang will be followed by David Jeans, President of Heritage Ottawa, and after Mr. Jeans, we'll hold there for lunch.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and honorable committee members. My name is Zhang Guyang, and I am a new first-time parent, and I'm also a resident of our Carlington ward. I'm here to advocate for a Chinese and English parenting group in our Carlington region to promote health and behavioral management education to new parents and their children who have language limitations. Our goal here is to create a group environment that is open to all, but has a Chinese language connection, so that we can learn necessary parenting skills and new language skills, so that we can raise our children appropriately and reconnect with
Can you just speak right into the microphone? We're having trouble hearing you.
Yes, I apologize. So our goal here is to create a group environment that is open to all, but also has a Chinese language connection, so that we can learn necessary parenting skills and new language skills to raise our children accordingly and reconnect with our community. I have been reaching out to parents in needs, and I started an online petition on change.org, and so far we have collected 61 signatures to support this notion. We are seeking an on-ramp funding to assign Chinese and English speaking facilitators and classrooms to deliver education to this rather isolated population. In the long run, this can lower mental and behavioral disorder treatment costs. It also reduces family violence, and it will create a more socially engaged, engaged families with healthier children. Chinese is the mother tongue of over 33,000 people in Ottawa and Gatineau region. In our Carlington ward, children under 6 years old is taking up 24%. 8.6% of the population is with Eastern Asian root. Both of these are above our city average, and where language is a key impediment to many new parents or caregivers who have insufficient knowledge to access community resources that provides professional child behavior management education and health support. Children in these isolated families are more prone to development issues, including anxiety disorder and learning issues. The Chinese parenting group established in Somerset Community Health Center is a focal point currently providing health and behavioral management education in Ottawa. For example, the Nobody's Perfect parenting group in Somerset is a very popular group. It offers seminars every week to parents, and also a playing group to their children, where their parents can take the course and their children are being looked after. The instructors are able to deliver information in both Chinese and English to help parents bridge the language gap. We were able to translate methodologies to help and to communicate with our babies, to help them to cope with their feelings, identify their issues, so that they can bring positive empathy and ideologies back to our societies and school. As a matter of fact, this is the only service available in Ottawa, and it has reached its full capacity due to high demand. There's currently a very long waiting list and a shortage of staff. Many parents cannot access these services because they live far away from this location. They end up giving up, and they got left behind. So with everything being considered, I would like to ask for an on-ramp funding in support of a new Chinese and English parenting group in Ottawa-Carleton region to help new parents with language limitations. This will help them to receive crucial health and behavioral management education in an early stage and integrate themselves back to our community to give more than we take. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your presentation. There's a question, so don't go away. Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, sir, for coming down today. And I've certainly received and read your email as recently as yesterday on the initiative that you're putting forward. I'm certainly going to suggest that we meet to discuss your vision a bit further and for me to understand what resources may already exist in the community that I may be able to tap you into, and then if not, how we can go forward about what you're proposing. So I just wanted to thank you for coming down. I think there is merit in what you're proposing, and I'm going to commit to meet with you as soon as we can. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brockington.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. Our last speaker before lunch is David Jeans, President of Heritage Ottawa.
Thank you very much, Chair. As you're aware, Heritage Ottawa is a member of the Ottawa Cultural Alliance. You heard from 3 member organizations of the Alliance earlier today, and you will hear from one more of the Ottawa Festivals Network after lunch. I've been involved for over 2 years with the Alliance in developing the framework for the Arm's Length Cultural Development Feasibility Study that you heard about. Arm's length, one of the things that means is that we have collectively given a large support to the City of Ottawa of our efforts in putting this together and staffing the working group and the steering committee for this very important study. You heard earlier about the consultant selection of Lord Nordicity to carry out the study, and a diverse advisory committee being appointed. I've been part of the selection process for both of these, and our success in these selections among really outstanding candidates bodes very well for the success of the study. The Alliance is making very good use of the funding that you put in last year's budget to advance the goals of the 2012 to 2018 Arts, Culture and Heritage Plan, And the additional momentum funding mentioned at the beginning of this meeting by Dan Chenier is critical to moving these activities forward in 2018 and beyond. Catherine Lindquist mentioned, and I am also well aware of the city's capital investments in arts and culture. As an Arts Court tenant, Heritage Ottawa is living through the disruption of the Ottawa Art Gallery construction project, and yesterday I had a hard hat tour of this amazing facility. I think everyone in the city is going to be overwhelmed when they see the new Ottawa Art Gallery and what we're getting from that new capital investment and the renovation of Arts Court. As a recipient of city cultural funding under the Heritage Service Agreement program, Heritage Ottawa knows how important this operating funding is, and you've heard this from many groups today. In 2017, our operating funding leveraged a huge amount of volunteerism and substantial federal and provincial grants, private and corporate sponsorships that enabled us to mount our most ambitious programming ever for the sesquicentennial in 2017. We see at firsthand the benefit of culture to tourism development, particularly through our walking tours. In 2017, this included important conferences which we supported that brought many national and international visitors to Ottawa with the associated economic benefits. As part of the Ottawa Cultural Alliance, however, we are concerned about the shortfall in meeting the goals of the Arts, Culture and Heritage Plan by the end of 2018 and suggest that leveraging additional funding from the Airbnb levy or possibly from the new hotel tax could help fill the gap in community grants for the programming and operations side. And the estimate is this is about $1.6 million. In conclusion, we look forward to continuing our collaboration with the city through the Ottawa Cultural Alliance and through our own Heritage Service Agreement with the city. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jeans. Any questions for the delegation? Seeing none, you are all free to go for lunch. If you could please be back here at 1:30 sharp, I'd appreciate it.